So I'm not entirely sure that these apples are ready for picking. They still are a little tart, but they are coming off with just a little twist and a little tug, like apples are supposed to when they're ready. And I am having drops that aren't bad. So, being as that, I don't know what variety this is. I am assuming / guessing that this is not like a super sweet apple, maybe more of a tart apple, more for baking and things along those lines. Samson there enjoys eating apples and picking them from the tree, don't you, Samson? So now the sad thing is, if I make a sauce with these, it's probably going to be fairly tart, and I might have to add sugar, which I don't want to do. So I do have a recipe I wanted to try. That is a apple pie filling recipe, and I will link it, which would be more appropriate for a tartar apple. So we will see. And they're not entirely red. Some are kind of all green with just a little hint of red, but you can see in here some of them are red. Now some of these are still a little buggy, but all that in consideration, you should have seen this tree last year. There was not a viable apple on it, not one single one. So the spraying definitely helped. And I can do some trimming while I'm, processing these if there are spots. Now that last apple came off with some leaves, which is not supposed to happen when they're ripe, but this one just came right off with an earwig. And they're pretty large. I have a very large hand. So these are they're pushing softball size, and they have been getting larger every day. Now some are probably closer to a baseball, and some, here and there are very small. But all in all, I'm pretty pleased with my efforts this year. So I'm gonna get a bunch of these picked, and then we're gonna figure out what we're gonna do. Now I was hoping to not deal with these apples for a while. It's not quite September yet, it's late August, so this is an early apple. And we're leaving for the beach Monday morning. So I had other things I was doing. I was hoping that these would be ready when I got back, but they're not going to be. I'm afraid I'll lose them if I wait longer, because some are they're just dropping. So, and that is how it's supposed to be when you pick an apple. Once again, I'm using these fantastic baskets I got at Walmart. I'm loving it. So let me get all these picked. Gonna need a ladder, probably gonna need some help. And I'll bring you back and I'll show you what we've got. Now I could possibly store some of these maybe in my basement in some cooler temperatures. These aren't quite like pears where it's a little harder to hold them. Apples you can store a little bit. Of course, if they have a buggy spot. Now that one doesn't want to come off. If they have a buggy spot, that's not going to be good. They're not going to store well. But if they are a sound, good-looking apple, they should be okay. Look at that one. Just split right open. And that one there has a crack. Doesn't want to come off either. Now, if I was making sauce, I could just, as long as the other half was good, I could just cut that half off. So I probably am going to try making some sauce. Probably going to have to sort these. But anyways, we'll come back to this. So let me bring your attention to my other apple tree. Now this one is right here beside the other one. Excuse the weed here. I believe that's called a pokeweed. There's my tree I sprayed this year. Here's my tree I sort of sprayed this year with the pokeweed worked in there. So the spray I'm using, it also does treat for some diseases. Helps with some funguses and some other things that kind of go on with fruit trees. And you know, flowers, and just, you can use it for all sorts of things. And I'm gonna have to show you it. But I'm thinking there might be something else going on with these apples. Now, they don't appear to be quite as ripe as the other ones. They're not pulling off. They are dropping a little bit, but not as much as this other tree here. They are redder, but they are definitely a different variety. But do you notice on the apple these spots? And I think that that is something that maybe had I been spraying wouldn't have been an issue. So how it worked was I was testing out spraying this year, first time ever. I wanted to get some viable apples out of this great producer. And then I happened to have a little bit of excess, and I just kind of willy-nilly sprayed this tree. So it didn't get a real consistent, good coverage. Obviously, it needs some heavy pruning. It just needs some work. So I don't really know. I'm certain these aren't ripe yet, and I don't really know what's going on with them. So now every once in a while I see one that looks pretty decent as far as coloration and that spotting, but I just don't know. So if you know, maybe you'll want to let me know. If not, my solution is I'm going to trim this tree a lot heavier this fall, this winter, and I am going to consistently spray it, and we will see what comes of it. So the entire tree is not picked. There's still probably at least twice as much as this out there, maybe more. But I decided I'm going to take a little gentler approach, and I need some ladders to access a large bit of what's left out there. So I'm going to kind of go through these and separate them. Like, some of them are a little borderline, there might be a spot. Those ones, like this one, I'm going to probably do applesauce. I'm going to sort out the ones that are looking really nice and are really uniform. Those I'm going to make the canned apple pie filling. So, because they will go nicer through my peeler core slicer. Also, probably like the really little ones are probably going to become applesauce as well. So anyways, I'm going to sort these and then wash the ones I'm going to start on applesauce with. Okay, so here are the apples that we're going to be making this sauce with. To start, over here are the apples that we are going to make the pie filling with to start. So I'm going to get these chopped up a little bit, cut off any bad spots, and put them into a pot. All right, so I'll catch you up to speed. I have done about 3.5 pots like this of apples. Look at them. They're ready to go through my Johnny Apple sauce maker. And if you've never used one of these before, it's a real delight. So much better than the old school food mill. You just put your apples that you've cooked down a little bit in the top after they've cooled a little. You turn the crank, and out comes the sauce. And out the end, here comes the peels and the seeds. And you can run that back through again if you want. So I have 7 quarts that I've processed now. I'm using my new steam canner. If you've never heard that before, it was new to me too. I will do a video on it in the near future, but I want to get used to it first. Anyways, I have 7 quarts done. I'm just going to run this last pot of apples over here through the mill, and then I'm going to just refrigerate them in my crock pot until tomorrow, when I'm going to taste it, see what I want to add or if I want to add anything, and then I will heat it back up in the crock pot and I will process another set of quarts. So I wound up, I have 3 baskets of what I will call non-seconds down in the basement, and I'm going to try to just have them hang out there until I'm back from vacation. Now my apples that weren't like in ship-shape condition became the sauce, so we're going to see how those hold up. But I just wanted to give you a little glance here at this. So when you're cooking down your apples, it's no real science. You put your apples in your pan, you put a little bit of water. I put about 1.5 cups of water for this pot full of apples. Of course they cooked down and I kind of added some more apples in that I had cooking in another pot. My applesauce is pretty thick. You will see that. You probably just did see it coming off of the sauce thing. So you could put more water in if you want a runnier sauce. It smells lovely. So I just have the the apples, about, like I said, about 1 cup of water in here. I had about 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then I just put it on medium till I get a little simmer, and then I turn it down to low and just stir it periodically. You want it like simmer, low, because you do not want to burn. You can see here, this, I don't know if you can see it. There is a fragment of some scorching here. Let me see if I can get it. Because I burnt some of my first pot. So there's a lot of sugar content in the apples. You don't have a lot of water, so it is very easy to scorch it. So be very careful. You're better off cooking it longer, lower than risking really messing up a pan or messing up a batch of apples. Fortunately, mine were salvageable, but these couple little specks you see here and there are results of that. So we're almost through here. Yep, ready to put more in. And this, you don't shove things down, it's just to kind of guide things into the hole there. Here we have some apple butter in development. This was a crock pot of apples. I decided to pick off the tree that were still on there, and I left them cooking overnight and didn't mean to, and so now we're turning this into apple butter. So apple butter, you kind of cook the apples similarly to with applesauce, except you cook them longer, and you also add some seasonings and spices. So for every 2 quarts of like the puree, you add 4 cups of sugar, a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and you cook it till it's a nice thick consistency, and then you can it in little jars and process it for 10 minutes. So this is the apple butter. I just added the seasonings and the sugar, and once it gets nice and bubbly and a little thicker, we'll can it. So I've got my final bunch of apples here, becoming applesauce and ready to go into the sauce. So I'm finishing up my apples here. I sliced, cored 60 cups of apples and froze those, and now I have a large pot of what's going to be applesauce, and I have it here in the Johnny applesauce maker, which is a type of food mill, and so we're just going to run it through. This works super fast. I have the little hopper here filled, just clamps onto the counter. I'm just going to crank it. And you see my banana in my my little bucket there, my bowl that's going to, into that is going to come the seeds and the skin. Come out that little side there. And you can see the sauce coming out here, right into my container. So once I have this all processed through here, I'm going to taste it, see if it's sweet enough, which it should be. Maybe add some seasonings, I'm not sure. And then we'll be ready to can this. And then I will finally be done with my apples. So here is all of my applesauce. You can see it's 1, 2, 3 rows across, 1, 2, 6 rows deep. So there's 18 quarts of applesauce. And then up here is another 7 rows of applesauce. I also have some apples frozen in the freezer. So this is my freezer that has primarily prepared food that can just easily be reheated, vegetables, and fruit. So primarily that's what this freezer is. A couple oddities tossed in. There's some pepperonis there, some frozen butter, because you never know, right? But anyways, here are the apples. And these are just sliced and peeled. I did them in 6 cup bags because one of my favorite recipes is this apple cake, and it takes 6 cups of chopped apples. And I have used frozen apples in it many times before. It works beautifully. So I did preserve a lot of apples in this manner, and it looks like there's at least 6 or 7 bags here, and I may have some stashed elsewhere because you just never know with me. But even if we don't end up using those, they could easily, very quickly be turned into applesauce because they're already peeled. I mean, it's just, you would just cook them. Oh, that reminds me, there is one other thing I did with the apples that I need to show you. So I hope you enjoyed this video of dealing with the apple harvest with me. As you can see, time has elapsed since I started filming the video till now when I did my conclusion. And now the leaves are all gone. So stick around, see what else we'll get into, see what will happen next year with the harvesting, and just check out my other videos.